This is the Rogue Overland Adventure Rig Show. I'm Nick Savacci. Welcome to another episode. Today we're going to be talking about our 2020 Nissan NV 3500 van, which we've dubbed the Adventure Van. Now, typically when we would be recording one of these videos, it would be me interviewing somebody else about their rig. But today it's just going to be me, since we're talking about one of my personal rigs. We're going to go through and just go category by category and discuss the different things that we've done to modify this vehicle for what we want to do. So the first category would be to talk about how I got into off-roading and also why we picked this particular platform, okay? So for off-roading, for me, I'll just keep it short. I grew up riding dirt bikes, started riding a three-wheeler when I was 3 years old, and then rode dirt bikes all through my youth. And somewhere in my early driving years, got out with my dad in an old, it was a 90s era, I think it was 89 actually, S10 Blazer. And my dad kind of taught me the basics of off-roading in that. And from there, I was just kind of hooked, and it has just progressed from there through several different vehicles and all levels of off-roading, from just fire road camping to pretty legitimate rock crawling right up against the line of needing to have a buggy. So that's kind of the short story of how I got into off-roading. If you're interested in a more in-depth background on me, or Mike, one of the other Rogue Overland guys, then you can check out episode 1 of the Adventure Chat podcast. I will put a link down in the description below. You can click on that, and episode 1 kind of goes deeper into my background and into Mike's background. So this particular platform, was the reason why we chose this platform. It was built out of kind of the COVID era. We had a Tacoma that was an amazing build, and I'll also link the build video to that in the description below. But when COVID happened, my family was traveling a lot without me, and then I would catch up to them kind of on the weekends. And what I didn't like, and what my wife didn't like, was that in the Tacoma with the Adventure Trailers habitat, you had to exit the camping area to get to the driving area. So if there was ever a situation, something like goes bump in the night type deal, and they wanted to kind of bug out, it wasn't a really effective setup. So we kind of went down the line of vans, and we chose a Nissan NV because of the body on frame design. For us, if you've seen any of our other videos, we do some fairly aggressive rock crawling and like to get to some places that other people can't necessarily get to. And so we liked the idea of this is basically a Nissan Titan XD. And yes, there are other options with the Ford Econolines, the Chevy Express, but for kind of where we were at and what we wanted to do, the Nissan made the most sense. And the Mercedes and the Ford Transit and the Dodge ProMaster, they just weren't even options, being kind of the design and fundamentals, backbone, if you will, that those vehicles are, being a unibody design. So that's how we ended up with the van, and it really has suited our needs, being able to travel our family of 5 to places we want to go, and then being a very versatile build in the sense that we can tow our rock crawler behind it if we need to. We can tow dirt bikes behind it. We cannot be towing a trailer and get out to anywhere we want to go. And it also cruises down the highway at highway speeds just fine with that Nissan Titan engine, the 5.6 liter. Let's talk about the suspension, wheel, and tire package. And I have some notes here so that I get it all right and I don't forget anything. But basically, it's all Icon underneath as far as suspension goes, and then our wheels. There weren't any suspension lifts available for the van that we were interested in, and and aware of at the time when we built this, which would have been in 2020. And so we reached out to Icon and kind of chatted with them, and we came up with a solution. And so the solution was, the front is a Nissan Titan XD kit, and that is the upper control arms and the coilovers, okay? And then in the back is just a lift block, a 1-inch lift block with the factory springs. And then we are running a custom Icon shock back there. Now, it was a lot of work to kind of get everything fine-tuned and working just right. Initially, it was kind of undervalved and wasn't really controlling it. And it took a couple renditions. And I'm not a wizard, and I unfortunately can't give you a part number to say, hey, this is the part number. But the gist of it is, we went to Icon and we made a custom shock that is a 16.5 inch under compression, and then fully extended is a 20.5 inches fully extended. Now that will fit, and then all you have to do is just make a small bracket to move the brake lines, where the brake lines come along the axle, and then the brake line comes down. That has to be lifted about an inch, and you kind of bend them up a little bit so that at full compression, at full droop, it will not damage those lines. Tire-wise, we're running the BF Goodrich all-terrain KO2s. I've liked those for a long time as far as an all-terrain tire goes. No sponsorship or anything. It's just been a tire that I've had good luck with, so that's what's on there. And that's an LT 285 by 75 on an R17. Now let's talk about the wheels real quick. The wheels, I just have a note here so I can give you the part number. The wheels are a 17-inch Rebound HD from Icon, part number 18178585052SB. And we couldn't remember exactly how much we milled the wheels. The wheels were milled a little bit to change the offset, and the best that we could recall between myself and our contact at Icon was that we milled 5 millimeters off of each wheel just to tuck the wheels in a little bit more. And the reason for that is because if not, you're gonna get rubbing of the sliding door. So when you try to open that sliding door, it'll contact the tire and wheel package. Now, if you're interested in more details about the suspension itself, I have a dedicated video just for that. I'll put the link down in the description as well. Let's get into the drivetrain. Now, this is where this van starts to get a little spicy. So with the kind of places we wanted to get to, something that was two-wheel drive was just not an option. So the four-wheel drive system in this van, you can do it two ways, and the way that we chose to do it was we went with advanced four-wheel drive in Salt Lake City and converted it to four-wheel drive. And it's converted to four-wheel drive using basically a Titan front differential, and then using a Chevy transfer case. Now, I don't know which transfer case, so please don't reach out and ask me. That's also not something that I particularly should be sharing, I guess, because we did pay to have this system installed. But that being said, the reason why we went this way instead of using the transfer case from a Titan is because I wanted the manual lever shifting, or lever shifting, depending on where you're from. I wanted that lever shifting because of the keep it simple, stupid principle. And that is that if I'm just using my hand to shift it, and we're not relying on any electronics to shift into four-wheel drive, then there's less things to fail when we're out on the trail, okay? So that's the four-wheel drive system. Now, in the differentials, we actually had the differentials re-geared to 3.7 gears. I forget what factory is, but it's a little bit of deeper gearing. And the reason for that is just we knew we were gonna go to bigger tires. Not that this engine doesn't have enough to push those tires, but also just because with the low range rock crawly type stuff, I just wanted to have a little bit more gearing and a little bit more control for some of the downhills and some of the situations where we'd be crawling slower. Now, to top off the drivetrain, we did put an ARB air selectable locker in the front differential. and that has been phenomenal. The van is actually quite capable, but there's been a few situations where we've needed just that little extra bit of push or traction per se, to say, and having that selectable locker has just been a nice thing to have. Never got around to putting a locker in the rear differential, although I know there are some vans, to my understanding out there, some Nissans that have it. I don't know the details on that, but I would suspect that the ARB locker that goes into a Titan XD rear locker probably would bolt right into this particular vehicle. But again, I cannot confirm, but I can tell you that the ARB locker for a Titan XD can go in the front of the van when it's converted by Advanced Four-Wheel Drive in Salt Lake City. Let's take a quick break here from the details of this particular build. And I just want to say, really appreciate you being here. And if you're enjoying this content, please consider smashing that like button and subscribing to the channel. If you enjoy outdoor and off-road content, please check out our other videos. We have trail review videos, adventure videos, gear review videos, and then of course, the rig walk around videos. Now let's get into the armor on this rig. I'm gonna throw some things into this category just because I think that they don't necessarily fit anywhere else. But also, I will say, keep in mind that this was a rig to more of be an adventure rig for the family, not a rock crawly rig. So we wanted to keep more of that somewhat OEM appearance. I know this van does not look OEM at all, but with the bumpers and such, we didn't want to go to big off-road bumpers because it just wasn't what this van was going to be doing. So the most important thing on a vehicle this long, in my opinion, is going to be the sliders. So we exclusively run white knuckle off-road sliders on all our vehicles, and I love them. I mean, they're super functional. These are attached to the frame, so you can put the entire weight of the van on these sliders. We've used these sliders before to kind of pivot around in narrower situations, and just functionally, they are an amazing addition to the rig. We took all the chromes off. Basically, the dealer that we bought it from had a package where you could swap all the chrome out for black, so it has that blacked out appearance. There's no chrome on this vehicle. Then the windows are all tinted with ceramic window tint, which is huge on a vehicle like this because there's so many windows. So that's fantastic, not only for the privacy of people trying to, look in potentially, but also, and most importantly, it helps keep the heat out here in the Southwest, kind of makes it not quite get so blazing hot in there when the vehicle is parked. And then the last thing, which was a recent addition prior to us going on to our Alaska trip, would be the Avatar Fabworks Surpax-A-Lot. And that goes on the back door, basically attached to the hinges. And the great thing about that is it's allowed us to just get a few things out of the rig and on to that. But most importantly is we put a water jug on there, and it is a great hand washing station. We'll talk about it later, but we have a table on that door, and so when that door is swung open, we just flip that roto pack, and it's a great place to just wash hands and make sure everybody's staying clean before we're eating lunch, things like that. Let's take a minute to talk about the electrical. So up front, we have an S-Pod switch panel. That is controlling the KC ditch lights, which are on custom brackets, custom ditch light brackets. Couldn't find anything off the shelf for the NV as far as that goes, so just went to a welder and had some fabricated. That switch panel is also controlling the Lux rock lights. Again, run Lux rock lights on all my builds, and I really like them. They work great. They're magnetic on the back, so it's pretty easy to just kind of get them wherever you need them, and then just have them, the wires tied down along the way. So it is also controlling the ARB compressor that is in the rear of the rig. Inside though, that compressor is mounted inside. And then it's also controlling the locker. Now for radio, running an ICOM, I think it's a 2300 model as I recall. And then the antenna for that is attached again to that ditch light bracket on the passenger side that I had made. And then I have the head unit up top. So I forget what it is. It came out of it was for a Tacoma, but it basically replaced, it would slide onto the rear view mirror mount, and then it had an attachment for a ram ball. And then from there, I just used a little adapter, the short adapter from ram mounts to attach to the faceplate. And then I'm running a Scan Gauge 2, run this in all my rigs as well. And it just works really well to be able to read a code real quick if there's an issue, or to, I use it to monitor some of the temperatures of the transmission, temperature of the water, intake air temperature, and then the voltage that's coming through out of the alternator. Now inside for holding cell phones, I basically just mounted a ram ball bolted kind of into the plastic of the dash, and then used the ram mount pieces to attach to a cell phone holder that I can't remember the brand, but we've had it in a couple builds now, and I wish I could remember it for you, but it's made of billet aluminum. If I come up with the details on that, I'll put a link in the description below, but it's been a phenomenal cell phone holder. So basically 2 setups, one for the passenger, one for the driver. And then also on the A-pillar on the passenger side, ram mount has one of their balls with a like a thread through it, and so on the oh crap handle, took that bolt out, mounted that in there, and then used some of their pieces to attach a Garmin InReach. I also have a Red Arc Tow Pro Elite tow brake, and that is mounted under the dash, and then there was a blank basically spot for a switch. It was blanked out, and I just drilled that out and mounted the adjuster right in there. And I've enjoyed that. I've been running that for several years at this point, and it's nice because you have the adjustment for on-road towing, like when we're towing the dirt bikes and things like that. But then also if you're running an off-road trailer, or if on the road your trailer gets a little out of sorts, then you push the button in and it basically will activate the brakes. So that's been pretty solid as well. Now in this particular rig, I'm not running dual batteries, although it's something that you could do, but we've been fine with the setup that we have. I put an oversized battery in the front, and that's an Odyssey battery, and the part number on that Odyssey battery is ODP AGM 27F. So it's been a fantastic battery for us, parked, doing the camping stuff, running the fridge in the back, all that stuff, no problem with that. And then I've run a dedicated power line from that battery to the rear interior of the rig, and then that line is what's running the ARB compressor, actually powering it. And then that's also dedicated power for the fridge that's back there as well. And I do have a fuse block back there. I haven't really made any additional attachments to it yet, but so there is DC current back to there. And then right in that back corner is also the factory inverter. Let's jump into the camping stuff, and that's where this rig really shines. It's also a spot where I'm going to kind of kitchen sink it and just throw some stuff in here that in my mind belongs under the camping category. Now the most obvious when you look at the van and you see pictures and such, especially with it set up in camp, is going to be that pop top. And the company that we went with is Colorado CamperVan, and I believe they're in Loveland, Colorado, as I recall. And the thing that's nice about this pop top is that it does provide, from our research, the most room, right? From the sleeping surface to the top of the roof. So we can actually sit up, my wife and I, grown adults, can sit up when it's popped up And so we've had all 5 of us up there before playing cards on really rainy days. Just a few more details on the Colorado CamperVan top. We did put a max air fan in the roof just for helping to circulate air. And then also there's LED lights on dimmers. And the thing that we did on those that are kind of different from the builds they usually do is there's the white light, but then in the middle there's also a red LED. And they're on separate switches and then both dimmable. So again, when we're out, we can be running the white light or run the red light, which is gonna have less tendency to attract bugs. On the interior, we've worked with Goose Gear for a long time, done a couple builds with their stuff, and it's quality stuff. It's fantastic. So we went with Goose Gear on the inside of the van. Now I want to be very clear, please don't call Goose Gear and ask for the Nissan NV stuff, because they don't make it. Here's the thing about something like this that's so unique is you're not going to be able to just grab a bunch of stuff off the shelf like a Sprinter van or like a Jeep Gladiator or something like that. So what it is I went with the platform that I believe is for their it's not Suburban, it's Expedition, Ford Expedition platform. And that platform is great because it holds most of our kitchen type stuff inside the drawer system. And then in the very back, it holds my tools. And then now that being said, I did reinforce that portion of the drawer system to hold the weight of my tools. That then also functions as an area for someone to sleep on a hiking pad. So there's somebody sleeping there, and then 2 to 3 people sleeping up top on the bed, so to speak. And then generally the other person will sleep on one of the bench seats that's still inside the vehicle. From there, next to that, we have I think it's their Kitchen 2.0 setup or something like that. I forget the exact model, but what it is it is a slide out that holds the fridge. We jump back and forth between an ARB fridge that we've had forever, that's kind of the smaller size, and then a Dometic, I think it's a 55, but don't quote me, a Dometic fridge. But basically that slide out for the fridge, and then after that an additional drawer slides out underneath the fridge, which then in our case we just have a simple Coleman camping stove there. Right next to the Goose Gear setup, we just made a kind of a custom, made out of wood, wrapped it in fabric shelf system, and that's going to basically hold like our camp chairs and our Dragonfly tarp and some of the other stuff. On the very bottom is under there is where the ARB compressor is. And then next to that, I built, or I should say we built, a custom table. So basically just a piano hinge, right? And then riv nutted that into the bottom of the door, and then the wood flips up, opens, so as that door swings open, there's another surface that's usable for when you're cooking and things like that. So it's been a phenomenal setup. It works really well for us to be able to cook and function without having to just yard sale all the stuff out of the rig every time we're trying to get to a can of beans. On the front, I installed a swivel seat so that the passenger seat will swivel around, then making that space a little more livable when you're in camp. And that has been great. One of the best things that we did as far as 5 people being able to maneuver inside the rig if necessary, if we're all tucked in there on a rainy day or something along those lines. And that company is discountvantruck.com. That's who we ordered it from. I actually made an installation video for that, so if you're interested in that, I'll also link it in the description below. Then we went through the entire interior, and the carpet is still there, but we put vinyl over the top of the carpet. Just bought bulk vinyl, tore everything out, took everything out of the rig, rolled it all out, cut for all the holes for things to mount back in and all of that. So so that's been great because it's an adventure van. I mean, dirt's getting in it, things like that, and we just sweep it out, wipe it down, and the carpet underneath is is good to go and not getting soaked and muddy and stuff like that. Then I went around in that same company. We did the rock lights, the Lux rock lights. I purchased red versions of those, and there's a couple red ones underneath the rig, and I just call those camp lights. So if you're out to the campfire and maybe it's a little ways away from the rig, or you're camping in a group, whatever, you can just leave those camp lights on, and it's not so much for seeing, but they shine under the rig so that when you're walking back in the dark, you can find your rig easily. We also made a custom overhead sort of stash area just for stuffing. Mostly we put rain jackets, puffer jackets, things like that up there. But that's made out of this kind of nylon type mesh that we got, I think, from like Joann's or something like this, and then paracord. And we basically just looped that in to some of the bolts that hold the interior pieces in, and also the brackets for where the doors shut. We also ran mounted window covers throughout the van, and then made some custom covers for the driver and passenger door. And the reason why we went with a mounted one that just rolls down and rolls up is because we didn't want them sitting all over the place, right? Or have to store them somewhere. We're already storing all kinds of stuff. And then lastly, and this by far the best, loved it so much, I actually did a setup on Conius, our solid axle swapped Nissan Xterra as well. But that is the Dragonfly Tarps Haku. And I kind of joke, is it an awning? Is it a tarp? What is it? But yeah, it's a tarp setup that gives great coverage, had it in tons of weather, and it just functions great. Pack it up, put it inside the rig, and it's out of the way when you're driving down the road or going down a trail. And if you're interested in that, I did a full review, kind of breakdown on that product as well. I'll put the link in the description. Let's break down the spare parts that I generally carry. Now, I grew up turning wrenches, learned a lot from my dad on all of that stuff, which I'm so thankful for. And most of any wrench turning that happens to the rigs that my wife and I own personally, I'm usually turning the wrenches on those. So I go maybe a little bit overboard sometimes, but I'm sure I'm not quite as crazy as other people. But basically, anytime I'm working on that van, I am working out of the kit that I carry on the trail, and that's tools. So I have all the sockets that will fit all the things that might need to be fixed or taken off or put back on that van. So that's part one of my spare parts, is having the tools to repair the van on the trail if necessary. And then because it is an independent front suspension, I carry a spare CV axle. Most of the time that's going to be the part that will go. So I carry a spare CV axle. I carry a extra bolt for the uniball. I've been on the trail before with guys where that bolt will come out and then their upper control arm separates from the spindle lower control arm, that whole setup. So I carry one of those. I carry an extra serpentine belt. I carry an extra air filter. And then in the van, I should be carrying tie rod ends, but I never quite got around to grabbing parts for that. And again, I'm not really wheeling this thing super aggressive, so I've never worried too much about that, with it being basically, to my understanding, that the Titan XD is like a 1-ton setup. So it's pretty beefy stuff, but I should be carrying extra tie rods. Let's talk about future plans for this particular rig. Now, life changes and times change. So actually this particular rig, we are going to be putting it up for sale. So I'm not actually going to do any additional stuff to it myself. If you're interested in the rig, definitely shoot us a message on the Rogue Overland Instagram. That's at Rogue Overland. Things that I would do if I were going to keep the rig, I think I would just clean up some of the stuff in the electronics in the back, that fuse block back there. I'd like to get that mounted a little more securely, and then probably run some DC USB plugs and things like that to the top of the goose gear setup where the fridge sits. so that, you know, phones and things like that could be charged there. Additionally, I probably would put a water tank and water pump. There's space in front of the Goose Gear kitchen module again, and then behind the rearmost seat that we've left in there. So there's space there where you could fit a water tank, and I think I would run a water tank there, and then up towards that kitchen area, right, that extra table that we made, I think I would have some type of water spigot and a pump set up. So that's really the only thing that I would still do additionally if I were gonna be doing more to this particular rig. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please consider smashing that like button. Consider subscribing to the channel if you enjoy outdoor and off-road content, and we'll see you on the trail.